Hi, my name is Asmita, your IELTS mentor here at Vedantu, and today we're going to solve two reading comprehension passages from the actual IELTS test. Now, both of these are going to have different kinds of questions. So if you don't know the different kind of questions that you can expect in a reading comprehension passage, I want you to pause this video, go watch my video on all the different kind of questions you can expect to see in a reading comprehension passage, and then come back and solve this. Now, these are going to be a bit difficult because they are from the actual academic IELTS test and they have that level of difficulty. So please make sure that you're in a distraction-free environment, and for the next 30 minutes or so, you can concentrate solely on this. It should not even take that long. It can be a bit sooner, depends on how fast you read. Now, if you're going to follow through with me, then I will keep a faster pace just to give you an idea of how fast you need to be doing this. But if you wish to do it on your own, then you can go to the Cambridge website and find the practice reading tasks. Find these passages there yourself quite easily. Academic reading passage 1 and academic reading passage 2. I can even get that linked in the description for ease of access, and you can do this at your own pace and then come back to the video to see if you were able to get all the answers right. Alright, now let's get started. But before we do, if you haven't yet, please make sure you're filling out the student counseling form to get expert counseling for free to make your journey to study abroad as easy and as smooth as possible. And you have to sit down with your parents to do this because it has questions related to the budget that you have in mind and different options that you're open to. So make sure that you fill out this form only if you're very serious about studying abroad, and then you will be put in touch with someone who can help you through that entire process. Alright, time to get started. Let's start with our first reading comprehension passage. That's going to be about cars. Here we are. Okay, so what I'm going to do first is I'm going to just kind of see how long this passage is to get an idea. Okay, not too long. I mean, okay length. And what are the kind of questions that I need to answer here? So the questions that I need to answer here are, okay, matching information to paragraphs. So I need to write the number of the paragraph next to the different pieces of information and make sure that I am correctly attributing the paragraph to the piece of information given here. Okay, so this is a very common question type in reading. That's what we're going to do for this paragraph. Let's get started. I'm going to annotate along the way. Again, if you want to do this at your own pace, then you can find these passages linked in the description and you can do these at your own pace. Come back to the video to check if you were able to do it right. Alright, so there are now over 700 million motor vehicles in the world, and the number is rising by more than 40 million each year. The average distance driven by car users is growing too, from 8 km a day per person in Western Europe in 1965 to 25 kilometers a day in 1995. This dependence on motor vehicles has given rise to major problems, including environmental pollution, depletion of oil resources, traffic congestion, and safety. So because I know the kind of questions that I need to answer have to do with what information is given in which paragraph, what I'm going to do along the way as I read is I'm just going to quickly jot down what the gist of each paragraph is. So over here, rising use of motor vehicles and the problems associated with that have been discussed, right? Okay, next. While emissions from new cars are far less harmful than it used to be, city streets and motorways are becoming more crowded than ever, often with older trucks, buses and taxis which emit excessive levels of smoke and fumes. This concentration of vehicles makes air quality in urban areas unpleasant and sometimes dangerous to breathe. Even Moscow has joined the list of capitals afflicted by congestion and traffic fumes. In Mexico City, vehicular pollution is a major health hazard. So this paragraph kind of hyper-focuses on fumes and pollution. Okay, next. Until 100 years ago, most journeys were in the 20-kilometer range, the distance conveniently accessible by horse. Heavy freight could only be carried by water or rail. Invention of the motor vehicle brought personal mobility to masses and made rapid freight delivery possible over a much wider area. In the United Kingdom, about 90% of inland freight is carried by road. The world cannot revert to a horse-drawn wagon. It can avoid being locked into congested and polluting ways. Oh, sorry, it's a question. Can it avoid being locked into congested and polluting ways of transporting people and goods? Okay, so just the historical context of what used to happen and why that's not possible anymore. That's C. Okay. Oops. In Europe, most cities are still designed for the old modes of transport. Adaptation to the motor car is involved, adding ring roads, one-way systems and parking lots. In the United States, more land is assigned to car use than to housing. Urban sprawl means that life without a car is next to impossible. Mass use of motor vehicles has also killed or injured millions of people. Other social effects have been blamed on the car, such as alienation and aggressive human behavior. So these are all other issues apart from pollution, like lack of land, road rage, accident deaths, etc., etc. Now, the reason why the handwriting here is horrible is because I need to understand it. So the same thing applies to you. When you are taking notes while annotating, you need to make sure that you understand it. Don't waste time over there. Okay. Now, next E, in 1993 study by the European Federation for Transport and Environment found that car transport is 7 times as costly as rail travel in terms of the external social costs it entails, which is congestion, accidents, pollution, loss of cropland and natural habitats, depletion of oil resources and so on. Yet cars easily surpass trains, buses as a flexible and convenient mode of personal transport. It is unrealistic to expect people to give up private cars in favor of mass transit. Alright, so here we are saying that even though cars cost more, they are convenient and so people will not give them up. Okay. So the reason why it's important to write down this overview is so when we go back to the questions and then we have to come back to each paragraph, then we can just see our notes and be like, okay, this information was most likely in this paragraph. All right. Technical solutions can reduce the pollution problem and increase fuel efficiency of engines, but fuel consumption and exhaust emissions depend on which cars are preferred by customers and how they are driven. Many people buy larger cars than they need for daily purposes or waste fuel by driving aggressively. Besides, global car use is increasing at a faster rate than the improvement in emissions and fuel efficiency, which technology is now making possible. So here it gives us a solution, but also tells us the roadblocks in the implementation of that particular solution. Then some argue that the only long-term solution is to design cities and neighborhoods so that car journeys are not necessary. All essential services being located within walking distance or easily accessible by public transport. Not only would this save energy and cut carbon dioxide emissions, it would also enhance the quality of community life, putting the emphasis on people instead of cars. Good local government is already bringing this about in some places, but few democratic communities are blessed with the vision and the capital to make such profound changes in modern lifestyle. Okay, so here another solution that is proposed is that use of cars should not be necessary, so that cities are designed in that way. And this is only possible in richer countries because they can afford to implement this level of infrastructural change. Okay, and this is the last paragraph, I think. So, a more likely scenario seems to be a combination of mass transit systems and travel and in and around cities with low emission cars for urban use and larger hybrid or lean burn cars for use elsewhere. Electronically tolled highways might be used to ensure that drivers pay charges geared to actual road use. Better integration of transport systems is also highly desirable and made more feasible by modern computers, but these are solutions for countries which can afford them. In most developing countries, old cars and old technologies continue to predominate. So again, a list of solutions is given where you have good public transport systems, tolls are based on who's using roads more, they are tolled accordingly. and application of tech to just improve traffic and transport, but again depends on which countries can actually afford them. And that brings us to the end of our passage. Now let's try answering the questions. Now first, how do we go about this? First, what we are going to do is we're going to try to answer from memory. Once we are done answering from memory, and if we can't remember exactly which paragraph, we are just going to write down that, oh, this was talked about in that paragraph where all these things were suggested. And once we do that, we'll go back and we'll figure out exactly which paragraph it was, right? So here, a comparison of past and present transportation methods. This was in that where they were talking about horse and freight travel. So it was that paragraph, this. Then we had how driving habits contribute to road problems. Again, this was discussed a bit later, and I think this was around the time when we were discussing road rage and how people drive aggressively. So let's go back and try to find the paragraphs for these two. Now, because this was in the freight one, I'm just going to go straight to that. Yes, and here it says historical context, right? And so this is where they are talking about 100 years ago, it was either horse or water or rail. So C is our correct answer for the first one. And for the second one, I think it was around here, driving aggressively. There we go. So this is F. Second one is F, how people drive, or what cars people are buying. So driver preferences, what cars they are buying and how they are driving, right? So F is the second one. So let's go with C here, F here. Okay, next. The relative merits of cars and public transport. Again, that was discussed towards the end, and I think we even noted it down, public transport somewhere. Oops. Remember writing down in my notes, public transport. I think this is because it says public clearly over. Can you see? Okay, wait, here we are. Buses as a flexible and convenient mode of personal transport. It is unrealistic to expect people to give up private cars in favor of mass transit, right? So here it says the relative merits of cars and public transport. Clearly, paragraph E tells us that environmentally speaking, this study has suggested that car transport is more expensive, it leads to congestion, accidents. So the relative merits of public transport are more, right? But it also says that unfortunately people won't give up the convenience of having a car for public transport. So here our answer is E. Now next, the writer's prediction on future solutions. Again, all the predictions were done in later paragraphs, so let's quickly look at them. A more likely scenario seems to be a combination of mass transit systems. So yeah, these are the, we've written public, toll and tech, all the different things, and again, only for countries that can actually afford them. So I think H would be the correct answer here. Now coming to the increasing use of motor vehicles, this is right at the beginning. Right? In fact, I think this was the very first paragraph, so answer should be A, where rising use and the problem, right? So don't even have to go and read the paragraph again. Our notes are enough to say that the increasing use of, literally in our notes I wrote rising, and rising, increasing, synonyms. So this is A. And finally, the impact of the car on city development. This was about infrastructure and how America allocates more space for houses, for car roads than houses, and how Britain doesn't have enough space to accommodate cars because it was meant for horses. So where is that? In Europe, most cities are still designed for the old modes of transport. United States, land is assigned to car use. So D will be our answer over here. Alright, so that makes it CFEHAD. CFEHAD. Let's see if we got it right. I haven't solved this before. I did it live in front of you. So if I get something wrong, that is a possibility. The answers are given at the end of this, I think. Yes. CFEHAD, is that it? CFEHAD. Bam! So we were able to solve the reading comprehension accurately. I hope you're able to see everything clearly. Yes. Alright, so not very difficult, and the smart thing that we did here, which we need to do in all reading comprehension passages according to the questions that we are trying to answer, is to make sure that we are approaching the paragraph so that it enables us to answer the questions. In this case, we looked at the questions, we knew it was related to information in particular paragraphs, and so we made sure that we noted down what each paragraph was about and what information it contained, so that we don't have to reread all the paragraphs again. Alright, okay, now let's move on to our next passage. Do let me know in the comments if you thought that the speed that I read in was okay for you to follow and if you can read in the same speed, or if you thought it was too fast. Do leave your feedback. Give me some genuine information as to where you stand so that I can help you get better, right? Okay, the next one is about the risks of cigarette smoking. Very important. Now, as you can see, paragraphs have not been marked here. So that means we don't have a similar question type. Let's quickly scroll down and see what kind of questions we're being asked. Okay, the length is pretty much the same. Oh, it's a yes, no, not given. So just like true, false, not given, yes, no, not given is a question type. True, false, not given has to do with factual information. Yes, no, not given generally has to do with the author's opinion on different things. So here, do the following statements reflect the claims of the writer in the reading passage? Yes, no, or not given, and these are the different claims. Alright, so here what we need to focus on while reading is to understand the leanings of the author, what the author feels, how for or against the author is when it comes to smoking. Obviously, it says the risks of cigarette smoking, so it's definitely against, but to what extent and what are the belief systems of the author, that's what we need to pay attention to, right? So here we don't really have to annotate the way we did for the previous one. Let's get started. Discovered in the early 1800s and named nicotinamide, that's interesting. The oily essence, now called nicotine, is the main active ingredient of tobacco. Nicotine, however, is only a small component of cigarette smoke, which contains more than 4,700 chemical compounds, including 43 cancer-causing substances. In recent times, scientific research has been providing evidence that years of cigarette smoking vastly increases the risk of developing fatal medical conditions. So, right off the bat, we are starting off with pure facts and statistics as to why cigarette smoking is dangerous. Now, in addition to being responsible for more than 85% of lung cancers, smoking is associated with cancers of, amongst others, the mouth, stomach and kidneys, and is thought to cause about 14% of leukemia and cervical cancers. In 1990, smoking caused more than 84,000 deaths, mainly resulting from such problems as pneumonia, bronchitis and influenza. Smoking, it is believed, is responsible for 30% of all deaths from cancer and clearly represents the most important preventable cause of cancer in countries like the United States today. So now pay attention to words like preventable. So here clearly the author is saying that it's just a matter of habit. The fact that all of these deaths are happening, they're not necessary. They're just happening because people perhaps don't know the dangers associated with smoking, and once they realize how bad it is, they will give it up and all these deaths can be prevented. Okay, passive smoking, the breathing of the side stream smoke from the burning of tobacco between puffs or of the smoke exhaled by a smoker, also causes a serious health risk. A report published in 1992 by the US Environmental Protection Agency emphasized the health dangers, especially from side stream smoke. This type of smoke contains more smaller particles and is therefore more likely to be deposited deep in the lungs. On the basis of this report, the EPA has classified environmental tobacco smoke in the highest risk category for causing cancer. Okay. Now, as an illustration of the health risks, in the case of a married couple where one partner is a smoker and one is a non-smoker, the latter is believed to have 30% higher risk of death from heart disease because of passive smoking. The risk of lung cancer also increases over the years of exposure, and the figure jumps to 80% if the spouse has been smoking 4 packs a day for 20 years. It has been calculated that 17% of cases of lung cancer can be attributed to high levels of exposure to second-hand tobacco smoke during childhood and adolescence. So you're in greater danger if you're not the actual smoker, which just seems so unfair. Alright, a more recent study by researchers at the University of California at San Francisco has shown that second-hand cigarette smoke does more harm to non-smokers than to smokers. Leaving aside the philosophical question of whether anyone should have to breathe someone else's cigarette smoke, the report suggests that the smoke experienced by many people in their daily lives is enough to produce substantial adverse effects on the person's heart and lungs. Okay. The report published in the Journal of American Medical Association was based on the researchers' own earlier research, which also includes a review of studies over the past few years. The American Medical Association represents about half of the US doctors and a strong opponent of smoking. The study suggests that people who smoke cigarettes are continually damaging their cardiovascular system, which adapts in order to compensate for the effects of smoking. It further states that people who do not smoke do not have the benefit of their system adapting to the smoke inhalation. Consequently, the effects of passive smoking are far greater to non-smokers than smokers. So this explains why passive smokers are in more danger, because they don't smoke. Their heart really hasn't gotten used to adjusting for all of that smoke, and that's why they are at a graver risk of developing cardiovascular diseases. Now, that's it. We have 3 left. This report emphasizes cancer is not caused by a single element in cigarette smoke. Harmful effects to health are caused by many components. Carbon monoxide, for example, competes with oxygen in red blood cells and interferes with the blood's ability to deliver life-giving oxygen to the heart. Nicotine and other toxins in cigarette smoke activate small blood cells called platelets, which increase the likelihood of blood clots. So this is just a scientific explanation. Now, again, see, I just went through it because I don't really have to know the science behind it. I don't have to understand it right now. I don't have to put it in my brain, because my questions are not going to be related to scientific fact. My questions are going to be related to the author's opinion. So I don't have to spend my time. I'm taking the time out to explain this to you, so you know that you don't have to waste your time reading this in detail during the reading comprehension test. Alright. The researchers criticize the practice of some scientific consultants who work with the tobacco industry for assuming that cigarette smoke has the same impact on smokers as it does on non-smokers. They argue that those scientists are underestimating the damage done by passive smoking, and in support of their recent findings cite some previous research which points to passive smoking as a cause for between 30,000 and 60,000 deaths from heart attacks each year in the United States. This means that passive smoking is the 3rd most preventable cause of death after active smoking and alcohol-related diseases. So, finally, the study argues that the type of action needed against passive smoking should be similar to that being taken against illegal drugs and AIDS. The UCSF researchers maintain that the simplest and most cost-effective action is to establish smoke-free workplaces, schools and public places. So here, right before we even go to the questions, from what we've understood by reading the passage is that the author is definitely speaking more passionately about passive smoking than he is about active smoking. So the whole argument of this essay is that yes, smokers are at risk. They are doing something, actively doing something that poses a health risk, but passive smoking, which affects people who are not even actively participating in the act of smoking, is preventable, and is also, he's speaking more for passive smoking and to raise awareness about passive smoking and how deaths from passive smoking can be prevented. So we kind of understand where the author is coming from, and he wants to raise awareness, he or she wants to raise awareness with regard to passive smoking. All the studies cited also kind of lean towards that, and that's the main focus of the entire essay. That's what we've understood. Now we're going to the questions again. Yes, no, not given. The first one is 30% of deaths in the United States are caused by smoking related diseases. Now here again it's a factual question. 30% of deaths in the United States are caused by smoking related diseases. Now, what is the actual figure that is given? Now, because it's a factual question, we'll have to go back and confirm, right? So, let's see where we have, okay. 30%, the figure is given over here. Smoking, it is believed, is responsible for 30% of all deaths from cancer and clearly represents the most. But here, what is the question? Let's quickly read the question carefully. 30% of deaths in the United States are caused by smoking related diseases. It says 30% of deaths because of smoking. And what does our passage say? 30% of all deaths from cancer are clearly, so smoking is responsible for 30% of all deaths from cancer. It doesn't say 30% of all deaths are because of smoking. So you understand the difference over here. We are not saying that all the deaths that happen in the United States, 30% of that are because of smoking. We are saying that 30% of all cancer related deaths are due to smoking, right? So this will be a clear case of no. The 30% figure is to say that 30% of all cancers are due to smoking. Okay. Next we have, if one partner in a marriage smokes, the other is likely to take up smoking. Now the thing is, we don't even have to go back to that paragraph that explains this, because it clearly says, it talks about the dangers. It's not talking about habit. Throughout the passage, and the reason why I'm not going back, you can go back and check if you wish to. I don't have to go back and check because I remember it clearly saying that if one partner smokes, the other partner is likely to get diseases related to smoking. It does not say that the other partner will also start smoking. It talked about a marriage where two partners, one is a smoker, one is a non-smoker. The non-smoker is also at risk for smoking related diseases. So here, it does not say this, so it's not a yes, but it does not say anything that contradicts the claim, right? So it's not a no either. We simply don't know. So this will be a not given in this case, right? Next, teenagers whose parents smoke are at risk of getting lung cancer at some point during their lives. Now, from what I remember, this was given, and we can go back and check somewhere over here. It has been calculated that 17% of cases of lung cancer can be attributed to high levels of exposure to second-hand tobacco smoke during childhood and adolescence. So adolescence is your teenage, childhood is your teenage, and it says that children who are exposed to smoking, 17% of all lung cancer cases can be attributed to children who are exposed to a smoking parent in their childhood. So teenagers whose parents smoke are at risk of getting lung cancer at some point during their lives. This is clearly listed. In other words, it is given, so we can go with yes over here. And finally, it says opponents of smoking finance the UCSF study. So even though it does not, there is no mention of who is financing the study. There was a little bit of talk about biasness here when it comes to the studies where only smokers are taken into consideration and non-smokers are not taken into consideration. But other than that, there was no, we would have underlined if it mentioned that who is sponsoring these studies. So if we go back to the UCSF study, nowhere does it say that it has been paid for by the opponents of smoking, and it doesn't say anything about how it has been financed. So we can't go with no, we can go with not given, because information about its financing has not been provided. So from what I feel, my analysis says the answers should be no, not given, yes, and not given. Let's see how we fared. No, not given. Yes, not given. All right. Phew. So we got it right. All right. So I hope that cleared things out for you. Let me know how you did in the comments. Please do tell me how you scored. Remember that even if you got 1 or 2 wrong, you can still get a band 9. Oh, whoops. Let's go back to where we were. 1 second. All right. So let me know what are the things that you need to let me know. How did you score? What was challenging for you? All right, I want these two things in the comments. All right, that brings us to the end of today's video. Hope you found that helpful. If you did, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and follow us on our socials so you don't miss out on updates. And I'm very scared after reading that reading comprehension passage, so make sure you don't let anybody smoke around you. Tell them to go do it. If they want cancer, they can do it in their own space. Don't unnecessarily suffer because of other people's stupid decisions. All right, take care. Bye bye.